Hello everyone, in this video we are talking about top 10 supply chain suites in 2025. So let's dive right in. My name is Seth Gupta. I am principal at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the independent, vendor agnostic technology advisory firm. We help our clients with technology selection, digital transformation strategy, and change management. On that note, let's go back to today's topic, which is the top 10 supply chain suites in 2025. And we have many different lists and quadrants around the similar topic. We have suites, we have SNOP, we have real-time visibility platform, as well as we have business network list as well. And the purpose of each of these lists as well as quadrant is different. So if you have not checked those, you might want to check. They are available on our YouTube channel simply by googling Elevate IQ Plus. Whatever topic that you are looking for, you might be able to get that. If you're not able to get, you can always contact us and we will be more than happy to help you. Now, when it comes to supply chain suites, it's a suite constructed from the supply chain perspective. So we have many different suites in the market. For example, you talk about ERP suites or the analytics suite. Generally, the perspective is very different. For supply chain suites, this is going to be relevant for supply chain centric industries. Some of the most common pillars that we have for supply chain suites is the network, planning, as well as the analytics. So when we are looking at this list or quadrant, or when we are comparing these platforms, we are looking at how comprehensive these platforms are around all of these key capabilities. Some platforms might be stronger in specific capabilities of these three, but they might not rank as high just because the other areas might not be as rich for these suites. So the criteria that we have used for this list is product share, acquisition strategy, focused on supply chain suites, product roadmap, community, ecosystem, win rate, technology strategy, as well as the investors. So now let's look at the list. Number 10 on our list is Dassault Systems SCM. And overall, if you look at this particular suite, this is part of the Dassault Aviation. This is a French company, and they have massive presence in the automotive as well as aerospace sector, with a major focus on the aerospace-centric sectors. So this is owned by them, and their ecosystem is going to be majorly penetrated. They also have an ERP system. They are majorly penetrated into the CAD as well as the PLM-centric ecosystems because they have SolidWorks as part of their portfolio. So in this case, the perspective of this construction is going to be very different. Here they are including not only your supply chain suite, but you are also going to have the ERP and engineering centric capabilities, with the only exception being not as strong in the MES centric capabilities. There are suites in the market that are stronger on the MES as well as the OT centric capabilities. Here, we are looking at the engineering centric capabilities plus your ERP and all of the SNOP centric capabilities that you are going to. So some strengths to keep in mind is this suite is created more from the ERP perspective. So in some industries, for example, let's say if you look at the automotive or the manufacturing centric industries, in those, supply chain planning alone is not going to be enough, because you would need much tighter collaboration with your vendors, especially if you are going to have the international supply chain planning. You require joint collaboration, etc. If you need to have that, then you need to be tightly coupled with your ERP processes as well. The standalone supply chain suites, when you look at Blue Yonders of the world or E2 Opens of the world, they are not as tightly connected with the ERP processes, and that's why they are positioned for slightly different industries. They do really well in the retail-centric industries, because the processes for retail-centric industries is very different. They need to have the merchandising planning, etc. For manufacturing, that is not necessarily relevant. So this suite is going to be especially relevant for manufacturing centric verticals with the focus on automotive and aerospace. Some other strengths: compliance is going to be pre-baked for the automotive as well as the plastic centric verticals. They do really well in the plastic centric verticals as well, so that's a huge plus. Some limitations to keep in mind is the technology is not as modern. They have not invested as much in their technology, so that's a little negative there. Their ecosystem is also very limited, even though they have a lot of partners from the engineering perspective in their ecosystem, but they don't have as much expertise from the supply chain ERP centric perspective. That's going to be a little negative for that. And then they don't necessarily have the supply chain network as part of their suite. They might have partnerships, but they don't have their own network. Because of that limitation, they are not going to have as much control on their data, as well as what the things that they need to do from the network perspective to be able to get the data for AI or ML centric workloads. Other systems might be stronger on that. So that's number 10. Now, number 9 on our list is Trimble. And the industries that Trimble targets is very different. They are very strong in the construction-centric verticals. They are strong in the transportation as well as agriculture. And the reason why industry as well as the product types matter for the supply chain suites is because each product and their vendor networks are going to be very different, and generalized suites are not going to be as good for those industries. And that's why the industries as well as the micro vertical is extremely important, for these supply chain suites. So the strengths from the Trimble perspective is they were always very strong from their map capabilities, telematics, fleet management was very strong as well. So they are getting data for all of that. So that's a huge plus, and that's why they are strong in industries where either they are going to have their in-house fleets or they are going to be transportation-centric industries. They are also very strong in the transportation visibility, and the reason for that is because they had acquired a company called Transportian, and because of that, they have got the transportation visibility capabilities as well. Other networks on this list may not be as strong from the transportation logistics side of things, but Trimble is very strong there. They also have 3PL specific planning and data. Other suites may not be as strong from the 3PL perspective. Some limitations to keep in mind is not ideal for the manufacturing retail-centric value chain. The perspective is very different for Trimble, so that's going to be a negative for this. And their network is going to be limited compared to the other suites that we have on this list, and primarily focused on transportation, execution, and compliance. So that's number 9. Number 8 on our list is QAD. And QAD has very similar perspective as your Dassault systems. QAD was very strong in automotive, food and beverage centric verticals. They had their SNOP, WMS, TMS centric capabilities. So they have the execution component, but they are not going to have the network as part of their suite. But again, their perspective is similar to your Dassault systems, where they are going to be stronger for manufacturers because of that tight alignment with the ERP processes. Some strengths to keep in mind is integrated with the ERP solution. So this one is going to be pre-baked, and that's a huge plus for companies or the industries that require tighter collaboration with ERP. Not every industry is going to need this. For example, when you look at retail is generally not as intertwined with the ERP processes. For them, the ERP is just the accounting-centric processes, but for manufacturing, it's different. The cost perspective is very different. So that's why the supply chain suites for manufacturers are very different as well. And some other strengths from the QAD perspective is, again, their compliance is going to be pre-baked for automotive as well as F&B-centric verticals. Some limitations to keep in mind is not as diverse, and their ecosystem is very limited as well, just like your IQMS or IN4, and network is not going to be part of the suite, which I already mentioned. So that's number 8. Number 7 on our list is Manhattan Associates. And Manhattan Associates is very strong from the WMS perspective. But when you look at their suite, they have some TMS capabilities, so that's going to be your execution. But overall, their suite is very limited when you look at their capabilities for things such as your SNOP or network. They are not going to be as rich in those processes. But Manhattan does have very strong capabilities from the retail perspective. For example, when you look at the retail merchandisers and planners. So again, the perspective for retail is very different, as I have been talking about that, while discussing the other vendors that we have reviewed so far on this quadrant. So again, this one is meant for retail. And the warehouse as well as the store visualization and planning capabilities are very unique for retailers. Manufacturers are not going to need those unless they have a retail component as part of their business model. And these guys also have some processes for the POS, OMS, etc. So that's going to be a huge plus for the suite. Limitations to keep in mind is the whole supply chain planning as well as network component is extremely weak. They might have fragments of it, but for the most part, they don't necessarily have that, and it's not necessarily SMB friendly. So those are some of the negatives, and that's number 7. Number 6 on our list is Kerbar or High Jump. And High Jump and Kerbar, that is the suite that is designed slightly for SMB-centric companies. Now, they have acquired many different companies and capabilities, and because of that, their suite is very comprehensive as well. When you look at their capabilities for last mile or any sort of capabilities from the execution perspective, they are really, really strong there. They might not be as strong from the planning and network perspective, but their suite is very strong from the execution perspective. The kind of things that you are going to need from the WMS plus TMS, they have a lot of that. The strengths, again, their WMS capabilities, TMS capabilities are going to be integrated, and they also have the last mile and parcel capabilities. So those are some of these strengths. Limitations, again, the external supply chain, when you look at the internal versus external supply chain, their external supply chain and the global capabilities are probably going to be limited. And network is not included. So those are some of the limitations, and that's number 6. Number 5 on our list is IN4 Cloud Suite SCM. And IN4 Cloud Suite SCM takes very similar perspective as your Dassault systems or here, the perspective is going to be very interconnected with the ERP processes. So this is slightly more relevant for the manufacturers, even though they do a lot of business with the retailers as well. But those retailers will also have some manufacturing component in general. So some strengths to keep in mind is comprehensive suite for supply chain management and great visibility platform with planning. And then they are also going to have the global trade workflows as well as the compliance capabilities. So those are some of the strengths. Limitations to keep in mind is the execution component from the transportation perspective is not as strong. So the suite is not going to be as strong or comprehensive as compared to other platforms on this list. And not proven with the enterprise workloads. They do really well in the upper mid-market, but they don't have as many logos from the enterprise perspective. And not necessarily fit for very small companies as well, just because the platform is slightly bigger. So that's number 5. Number 4 on our list is Oracle. And Oracle, compared to the other ones that we have reviewed so far, this is going to be applicable for slightly diverse business models. They are not going to have as last mile integration capabilities, compliance that you are going to find with the other platforms. So some strengths to keep in mind from the Oracle perspective is it's a comprehensive supply chain management suite. Even though the experience might be slightly more legacy, the platform is not as modern, as new, even though they have innovated, put a lot of R&D budget in innovating the cloud capabilities. Some other strengths to keep in mind is they also have very strong global trade capabilities, a strong planning platform integrated with their execution suite, and they are pre-integrated with ERP. So those are some strengths. Some limitations to keep in mind is network is not part of the suite, so the whole suite is not complete. It's not SMB friendly, and it's probably going to be very expensive as well. So that's number 4. Number 3 on our list is SAP. And SAP does have supply chain suite. They have network, but their network is more from the procurement perspective, not necessarily the complete network, the kind of networks that you are going to get with Blue Yonder or E2 Open. So with SAP, they also have very strong execution component in terms of their EWM as well as their TMS component. So the strengths to keep in mind from the SAP perspective is the comprehensive supply chain management suite, including their global trade management capabilities. The planning platform is very well adopted, used, but it might not be as friendly for folks that are looking for slightly easier to use platform. This is going to be for enterprise workloads, just because the capabilities are going to be very comprehensive. Sometimes that could be harder to use, and pre-integrated with ERP. So those are some of these strengths. Limitations to keep in mind is network not as part of the suite. Even though they have Ariba as part of that, and not SMB friendly, as well as expensive. Again, the limitations are very similar to any other enterprise platforms like Oracle. So that's number 3. Number 2 on our list is Blue Yonder. And Blue Yonder is very well adopted, and it's one of the most comprehensive suite overall from the supply chain perspective, especially when you look at retail-centric use cases. The strengths is one of the strongest supply chain suite, including the network. A lot of these suites don't test the network. With Blue Yonder, you have the network, so you are not only going to get the technical platform, but also the data, the industry data, as well as the external supply chain and the control tower capabilities that are going to be far more reliable than what you are going to get with the other platforms, unless you acquire these data sets as well as the externally separately. Ability to handle large number of SKUs for enterprise retailers, and that's a huge requirement, especially if you are going to have a lot of SKUs as well as the applications. A lot of these platforms scale for their planning scenarios. So for that, Blue Yonder is a great fit. And then you also have the external supply chain capabilities. A lot of these platforms may not have that. So that's a huge plus. Some limitations to keep in mind is, again, the perspective is limited. So ERP is not necessarily included as part of the suite. So if you are going to have processes, especially if you're a manufacturer, where you need to rely or you are going to have dependency on ERP centric processes, that integration might be difficult. So it might not be the best fit for manufacturing centric use cases. In some cases, that might be okay if those manufacturers are very retail centric, distribution centric, and they don't necessarily as much cost perspective. For that, Blue Yonder okay. But when you look at the complex manufacturing, where you require joint collaboration, etc., automotive, aerospace, for those verticals, it will fit. The network is smaller compared to other suites. For example, if you compare this with one, and it's probably not going to be SMB friendly just because it's a very great platform. So that's number 2. Number 1 on our list is E2 Open. And E2 Open is probably one of the most comprehensive suite. The reason for that is they are comprehensive on all of those 3 buckets. Their network is one of the strongest. Blue Yonder has network, IN4 has network, but their network is not as strong as E2 Open. The comprehensiveness of the data is different. So when you look at the decision grade intelligence, E2 Open is probably going to provide much richer intelligence there. Some other strengths. This is very strong fit for channel marketing centric scenarios, when you have to track the spend, when you have to do vendor collaboration, etc. In those scenarios, E2 Open does really job and very well adopted in those verticals. global compliance and e-invoicing support for these scenarios. E2open is going to be great as well. Some limitations to keep in mind is ERP is not included as part of the suite. So again, the perspective is very different when you compare this with QAD, Dassault Systems, etc. For those, they have far closer alignment with ERP. In this case, this is more relevant for retail-centric verticals. The manufacturers may use that as well, but they are not going to have as deeper dependency on ERP processes. That's why they are able to use that, not as MA-friendly, and the ecosystem is going to be limited as well. So that's number one. If you enjoyed this video, we are going to include a detailed report which is going to have much deeper analysis. So you might want to check that. This podcast is also available in the audio form on major podcasting platform. So you might want to hit subscribe if you like. And then we publish these videos on a weekly basis. So if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, you might do that. On that note, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one.